It was the deadliest fighter plane in the Pacific. The Mitsubishi A6M Zero seemed unstoppably outmaneuvering, outgunning and outclassing every aircraft the Allies threw at it. American pilots weren't just losing dogfights, they were being hunted out of the sky. It had a 12-to-1 kill ratio, and for the first 2 years of the war, the US had no answer. Before the US knew its name, the Zero was already rewriting the rules of air combat, and it all started here. It was unlike anything the world had seen before. The Mitsubishi A6M Zero wasn't just a fighter, it was a myth. Fast, agile, and seemingly invincible, it tore through Allied aircraft with surgical precision. It could outclimb, outmaneuver, and outgun anything the United States or Britain could throw at it. It was a masterpiece of engineering, a symbol of Japanese air superiority. And for the first 2 years of World War II, it ruled the Pacific skies. But what happens when a machine built for dominance meets a war it was never meant to win? The Zero's reign was absolute. Until one mistake, one lost pilot, and one fateful crash landing changed the course of history. The first reports of the Zero came from China. In 1940, Japanese forces invaded and faced little resistance in the skies. Their new fighters cut through outdated Chinese aircraft like a scythe through wheat. US advisors, including the legendary Claire Chennault, warned that Japan had developed a next-generation warplane. He described the Zeros as hawks in a chicken yard, but American intelligence dismissed the claims. Japanese aircraft, too primitive, they believed anything built in Japan was second-rate, vastly inferior to American and British designs. The prevailing assumption was that no Japanese fighter could possibly outperform US aircraft in speed, firepower, and durability. Therefore, they assumed that when war came, Japan's air force would be easy prey. And then Pearl Harbor happened. The impossible became real. Zeros screamed through the Hawaiian skies, dropping bombs and raking parked American planes with machine gun fire. In just a few short hours, the myth had become a nightmare. US planes were torn from the skies before they even had a chance to fight back. The Zero was faster, deadlier, and seemingly everywhere. And suddenly, the US had no way to stop it. In the early months of the war, the Zero established total air dominance. Allied pilots scrambled to fight back, but their planes were outclassed. American P-40 Warhawks and British Hurricanes couldn't match the Zero's agility, and any attempt at dogfighting ended in disaster. American pilots who survived their first encounters spoke of an enemy aircraft that seemed to defy physics. The Zero could turn tighter, climb faster, and strike with uncanny precision. It could fly for over 1,000 miles without refueling, allowing Japanese carriers to strike from unexpected distances. And yet, despite all of this, the Zero had one fatal flaw: it wasn't built to withstand a long war. Amidst the chaos of Pearl Harbor, one Japanese pilot never made it back to his carrier. Shigenori Nishikaishi was forced to crash land on Niihau Island, believing it to be uninhabited. He was wrong. At first, the locals treated him with kindness. They had no idea a war had begun. But as news of the attack spread, tensions rose. Some Japanese American islanders, torn between loyalty to their new home and their ancestral nation, sided with the pilot and helped him take hostages. Their goal was to recover vital documents from his downed plane and wait for rescue. The islanders fought back, overpowering Nishikaichi and stopping the uprising. But the message was clear. Cannes pilots would go to any length to keep their warplanes out of enemy hands. If one damaged Zero could cause such a crisis, what would happen if an intact one fell into American hands? The answer came just a few months later. June 4th, 1942, the Battle of Midway was underway. But Japan had another mission, a surprise attack on the American outpost at Dutch Harbor, Alaska. Among the elite Zero pilots was Petty Officer Tadayoshi Koga, a rising star in Japan's feared Air Force. He was young, talented, and utterly devoted to his mission. Zero dove over Dutch Harbor, machine guns spraying, American anti-aircraft fire erupted from below, filling the sky with deadly shrapnel. Then, his aircraft shuddered. He'd been hit. A single bullet ruptured his oil line. His Zero was still flying, but it wouldn't be for long. Therefore, Koga made a desperate decision to land on Okatan Island, an uninhabited emergency landing zone designated by Japan. But what he didn't know was that the island was a death trap. His landing gear touched down. The ground looked solid, but it wasn't. His wheels snagged in hidden, swampy terrain. The aircraft flipped violently, slamming nose first into the soft earth. The impact crushed the cockpit, and Koga never made it out. Silence fell over the island. His squadron, unable to land and recover him, had no choice but to leave him behind. 1 month later, a US Navy patrol plane spotted something unusual on the island. A gleaming, silver aircraft, perfectly intact, lying upside down in the grass. A Zero. The Americans had never seen one up close before, let alone in one piece. The wreckage was immediately reported, and within days, a recovery team arrived. For the first time, the US had a fully operational Zero, and what they found was shocking. The aircraft was brilliantly engineered, fast, agile, and with a staggering range of over 1,000 miles. It was a masterwork of lightweight design, using cutting-edge materials and advanced aerodynamics to achieve its superior performance. But therefore, it also had devastating weaknesses. The Zero lacked armor. Its fuel tanks were not self-sealing, meaning that even a single bullet could cause a catastrophic explosion. At top speeds, its controls locked up, making it difficult to maneuver. Us pilots now knew exactly how to bring it down. No more dogfighting, no more turning battles. Therefore, the US adopted new tactics. Instead of engaging Zeros in slow, twisting dogfights, American pilots would dive in from above, strike hard, and escape before the enemy could react. They called it boom and zoom. The hunter had become the hunted. And then came the final blow. New aircraft built to outmatch the Zero. The F-6F Hellcat was faster, stronger, and deadlier in every way. The US outproduced Japan at an overwhelming scale, churning out thousands of new fighters while Japan struggled to replace its dwindling fleet. The Zero's reign was ending.
The victory won in the West must now be won in the East.
By 1944, Japan's air superiority had crumbled. The once dominant Zero was no longer competitive, but rather than retire it, Japan repurposed it for a new, desperate strategy: kamikaze attacks. The aircraft that had once ruled the skies was now a one-way ticket to death. On May 11, 1945, kamikaze Zeros struck the USS Bunker Hill, killing nearly 400 men. It was one of their final acts before Japan's surrender. The Zero was more than a warplane. It was a symbol of Japan's ambition. But it had a fatal flaw. It was designed for a war Japan expected to win quickly. It was never built to withstand a prolonged conflict against a superior industrial power. It soared too high, too fast, and burned away under the relentless force of American innovation and overwhelming production. And in the end, one mistaker, lost pilot, a hidden swamp, and an abandoned aircraft helped bring it crashing back to Earth.